I look at all of these things, and I look at different videos where an assailant will pull a firearm on a law enforcement officer, and the first thing they do is they immediately pull and draw and mitigate the threat and the risk. I ask why the local law enforcement officer did not do so. The other thing is that when you set up an advance team, I keep hearing this about the perimeter elements.
Yeah.
The perimeter is actually established by your threats that are in the area. So if I don't have any threats outside of 100 yards, okay, fine, I can cordon off a certain area. But if I have a building 160 yards perfectly adjacent to the stage, that's an obvious threat, especially with an elevated position that has overwatch. Mm-hmm. That's a sniper's paradise. And, we talk about Eagle's Nest. You also have, which no one talks about, but the water tower.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's not a failure on the ground for sure, but 100%. Also a failure in advance?
I think it's a failure in advance. I think it's a failure to have the counter snipers to be able to establish their range fin and their sketch maps.
I also heard, we've also learned that local snipers were stationed inside that building.
I haven't heard that piece of it yet, but that doesn't necessarily make sense unless they were actually in a window which was backed off, because a lot of times you'll get yourself in there. Sometimes you expose your rifle in a way to try and do a force protection or a show of force that actually stops things. Others are actually more tactical where they'll sit back a little bit, but a sniper for the law enforcement is only trained to shoot about 75 yards, unlike your counter sniper teams that are on set. But here's my problem. In having done this for so long, they always say the adage of ignorance is bliss, and I think that's true. I've done thousands of advances. I've done thousands of counter-sniper operations with our teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
But wait, talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional? I mean an intentional failure on the part of...
No, I wouldn't say an intentional failure on the part of, but I got to just, I sit here and I scratch my head. You don't want to be the conspiracist. You don't want to be the person.
I'm telling you, because that's what it's leaning toward.
No, I know, and that's the issue, is that you walk this fine balance of, you're not trying to be a conspiracist, but you look at it and you go, how could this have gone so...
But it's one thing if someone on the street says it. It's not. You, Corn Mills, member of Congress, former sniper, you saying it, it makes my eyebrows go up. When you say you're walking the line on this, intentional what?
It almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Now we're attempting to kill you and take you off the stage.
Whoa. Let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at all the different possible capabilities. One of the things as a military member, one of the things as a person who's run in the special operations communities before, one of the people who's actually done this is that you look at all potential analysis, right?
Donald Trump and his team have said,
No, I agree.
Dial it back. Do not blame this on Joe Biden.
Oh, well, actually, I didn't say Joe Biden, to be completely
Who's the
clear.
they then? Let's be very specific.
Well, that's what the investigation has to do. Was it local law enforcement that had made the mistakes, or was there something to it? Was there other types of things that we need to be analyzing or looking at and providing analysis? My point is that when something's so significant, you're talking about something that hasn't happened in decades, right?
I totally...
But my point is this. From a perspective of someone who's actually conducted these are not difficult advances. This is not like I'm putting together a stage placement in a tight shot. This is about looking at your surroundings. What is my green, yellow, and red route, which is your routes out in case? What is my actual elements that I need to be looking at as far as mitigating threats or risks or increased levels? Where's my range fan for the sniper that says, okay, here's my 100, my 200, my sketch. Here's an area where someone could shoot. Because here's my thing.
So you're
Let's
saying,
just say it's a Royce element.
You are saying this is so basic that how big the screw-up was, that's what's leading your brain down this road?
That's exactly right, in a way. But because here's the other thing. Let's just say it's a resource.
Tom Emmer was just on with me, and he said very specifically to me, I wrote it down, he said very clearly, it is too early to be talking about who is at fault and who is responsible.
That's why an investigation is necessary.
But, is it not dangerous? Is it not reckless to even be throwing around the word intentional right now.
So to question things as we do an investigation is recklessness, because at that point, then should we never question anything? My point is this.
I'm not trying to be PC. My point is in the political environment that we are in.
What would it have taken, right? Let's just say that resources was limited. Let's go with that as a reasoning. So how many times have you seen where they just put a police car inside of a parking lot with not an officer in it and just leave the lights on as a deterrent? Why couldn't that have been a simple thing that was placed in? Why couldn't we have said to the owner of the actual AGR company, hey, look, we don't want to disrupt your business, but we also want to make sure your parking lot is clear of people trying to park in there for the rally. Why don't we place an officer there? My point is that this was too easy of a solution. And when I think about 160
I'm just so uncomfortable with even having
I'm uncomfortable with having to say it. Trust me, my whole point is that I would like to look at this and say, where was the mistake made? How can we correct it in the future? Why was this actually done? But I think that this does warrant a J13 type commission where we can actually look at it and say, let's investigate and find out why this happened so it doesn't happen to anyone. This is not about a political thing. This is about we had an attempt to assassinate a president. Mm-hmm. We really need to understand what a serious matter this is. And this was a milliseconds or millimeter difference between this being an attempt and this being an assassination. And I can tell you, at 160 yards, Kate, just to give you an idea, your off-the-shelf rifle shoots what they call 1 minute of angle at every 100-yard line. So at 100, it's 1 inch. 200, 2 inches, etc. So now you're talking about 1.6-inch grouping capability of a rifle off a manufacturing line. Your average human being, because we used to do this in understanding sniper training, you're 20 inches shoulder to shoulder, 40 inches head to waist, and you're 6'8" in your average head size. These are kind of the dimensions that you look at as an average. You're talking about a 1.6-inch grouping for multiple shots on a basic rifle. We're blessed, and I do believe in divine intervention, so I am a person of faith. Mm-hmm. I can't explain, one, I hope that it was a corrugated roof and maybe he slipped off on one of the edges of the corrugated roof or he was rushed. But the whole thing, I think, just needs to have a better explanation so that the American people and everyone can feel comfortable.
And I think that's why people are saying pump the brakes, because we've seen conspiracy theories, honestly, on the right and the left. I just said Donny O'Sullivan on that it's already going like wildfire. This is the kind of political environment that they're saying it's too hot and people are jumping to too many conclusions.
Well,
that's why I am so uncomfortable.
As a military member, one of the things that we do is we what if scenario everything in the world, right? That's how I know,
but I don't know. I'm just saying
when I look at
the what if that you talk about maybe in an investigation, and the what if that you are presenting on live television. I don't know. It's just...
Well, so, listen, I'm a public official.
Yes.
Anything that I do, anything that I say in the public. I don't try and hide it in private. I think that the American people need transparency, accountability, and accessibility to the elected officials, not to try and hide behind what we want to look at. And I also think that if the American people know that we're questioning these things as well, it puts them at rest to at least know, why aren't they at least looking into this? Why? We should look at every single situation which is of this significance. We should look at it from multiple angles to ensure that nothing is left out, nothing could be potentially claimed as being covered up. Yeah. We need to have more transparency to the American people, and I think that's what everyone deserves.
But a full investigation.
Full investigation.
Before anyone
that's right.
points at fault.
That's exactly right. And that's why I say I have not made an accusation of something. I just want to make sure we're covering our bases to ensure that we get a proper investigation at all levels to ensure this doesn't happen again and that our president can be safe.
Congressman, thank you for coming in. Thank you very much. John, back to you.